Good evening, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and I'm here with a tag for Tag Tuesday. So this is the My Shakespeare Journey Tag, and it was created for Shaktember, so that takes place over the month of September. It's an annual read-along of everything related to Shakespeare, and it is hosted this year by Jason of Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Kelly from BookFilm Not Reading, and Nicole from A Day of Small Things. I'm doing this from a camper van in Orkney, so it's not quite my usual setting, and my lovely dog is, whether or not she's not willing to join the conversation, but she's just sleeping just next to me, but I knew I had to do it by the end of September, so here I am. So there are 12 questions, and I'll get started right away. So question number 1 is, what was your first experience of reading Shakespeare? And my first experience was quite early on. I had a set of, me and my brother, a set of books of Shakespeare stories retold as comics, and I have just the really clear memory of there being a version of Twelfth Night in this comic book collection, and Malvolio coming in with his stockings that were yellow, and there were green cross garters, and the ribbons were like waving away from his legs in the comic. So that image of Malvolio stuck with me, and every time I see Twelfth Night I'm always thinking of this like green gartering on the yellow stockings. So that's my first experience of reading Shakespeare that I can remember. I can't really remember when I first read a Shakespeare play not in comic form, but I'd imagine I was about sort of 12 or 13, because when we started doing Shakespeare in secondary school, I knew that I'd already read some previously myself, probably not fully understanding it, and I already had my own copy of the complete works of Shakespeare, which I was very proud of, even though it's a very bad copy. So question number 2 is, has the reading of a Shakespeare play ever made you cry? And in the questioning of this, the reading was in bold, so I think that's like important distinction. Definitely watching Shakespeare has made me cry on occasion. I'm thinking specifically of a recent version I saw of King Lear with Sir Ian McKellen as King Lear, and the scene kind of towards the end where he's looking very frail and like unstable and unwell, that kind of brings a tear to your eye. But I can't think of an occasion when I've read a Shakespeare play and it's brought me to tears. I would believe that it could have happened, but I can't think of one. Question number 3 is to talk about some people who played an important role in your Shakespeare journey. So I've got 2. The first one is a family member, so it's my dad's dad, so my granddad, and we always used to call him Grand Arthur or Grandad Arthur, just as a family tradition, and he and his wife used to sort of take me and my brother and my whole family to see Shakespeare plays, but they also had in their house, like this is in the days of VHS, obviously not that long ago, but feels like a long time ago now, they had a cupboard in their house that was just all full of video cassette tapes, and amongst those there were just all of the Shakespeares, which I think were recordings of the BBC versions, that are just home recording videos. And like sometimes like if we were bored, like we would just be looking in this video cupboard, and they had like kids films, like they had the cartoon version of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but sometimes it would just be like, we'll grab an old copy of just one of the Shakespeare plays and just stick it on. I remember, I think it was Loveslavers Lost, watching it, having really no idea what was going on, but just starting to soak in that idea of Shakespeare plays being a thing that I was interested in. Sorry, a dog's just barking nearby, it's okay. And yeah, I think it was with Arthur that I first watched the Romeo plus Juliet, and I feel like I remember, I need to check when that film came out actually, because it might be a fake memory, but I feel like I remember him sort of explaining why this film was so interesting and why this film was such a good adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, with the way that they styled it with the guns and so on. Yeah, and that kind of went up until the end of his life. So the year that he died was the first year that I, as part of a school production, acted in a Shakespeare play, which was A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I think I would have been 10 or 11. And I remember that when he was really unwell, I remember telling him, and people telling him, that I was auditioning for the role of Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and him, despite being so unwell, sort of saying back to people, I don't think that I was there, but then reporting to me that he said back, like, Lord, what fools these mortals be, like he remembered that quote, even though he was kind of less present. So there's just, even to this day, like every time I think about Midsummer Night's Dream, there's just this really strong association to my granddad in my head, and he played a very important role there. The other person who played an important role in my Shakespeare journey was more from an educational standpoint, and that was my secondary school drama teacher, Mr. Talliard. And I had a few really good drama teachers at secondary school, but Mr. Talliard was really unafraid of kind of pitching into quite difficult plays and difficult material. So with him, we did a production of Twelfth Night, and I wasn't Malvolio. I played Duke Orsino, and he also took on Titus Andronicus, which is a really complex, dark play, and we were just playing into like the black humour of it. I played Titus Andronicus, and he was just very willing to just like throw this play at 13-14-year-old kids, and just see what we'd come out with, and just build on creative ideas, and have us like creating, obviously we loved all the like gruesome stuff, so creating fake heads and things like that, and yeah, just like trusting us to interpret that material and give it a go. I like looking back, it was just fantastic. So those were two people who had a really big impact. So moving on, question number 4. Name a favourite book or film about Shakespeare. I haven't read that many books or films about Shakespeare. Definitely did see Shakespeare in Love and did enjoy that. But there's one book, 1599 by James Shapiro. This was recommended to me by an English teacher in college, and I actually never finished it, but I read about the first 2/3, and it basically tells a biography of Shakespeare specifically by focusing on 1 year of his life, and it's the year in which he produced the first draft of Hamlet, and it gives like a really beautiful historical context to his life, and brings the period to life as well, and kind of just like helps you to kind of understand what was going on around him and what the influencing factors might have been. I enjoyed that, even though I never got to the end of it, and the reason that I didn't was not because it was a bad book, but because I had so much homework to do in college. I remember thinking I just need to put this down while I finish this essay, and then getting swept up in other things. So question number 5, which character in Shakespeare most resembles you and why? I was struggling with this question, and one of the characters that kept coming to mind was like the idea that I kind of relate to Hamlet because of his kind of indecisiveness and like the paralysis of indecision that he faces, or the difficulty that he has in coming to like big decisions. That's just multiple ways of saying indecisiveness, but anyway, I thought maybe my husband's going to have some different ideas, so I asked him, which character from Shakespeare would you say most resembles me, hoping he'd come up with something different, and he said Hamlet, because you're indecisive, which, at least we're both coming to the same conclusion. And then he decided to like lay it on a bit thicker. He said, you could say that you're like Caliban before you've had a cup of tea in the morning. Less happy with that one. Or you're like Juliet because you're never on time for things. So yeah, that's some different options, all of them very flattering as to different Shakespeare characters that I might be like. Question number 6 is, which play would you most like to see performed? And for me, I think that would have to be Titus Andronicus, because I had such a good time working on it and learning that play, and I feel like I still remember it a lot, and some of the speeches are fantastic. I've just remembered I didn't get the soliloquy for the next question. So yeah, I really like that as a play, but I've never seen it performed by anyone other than my year 8 drama class, so I would love to see that like done on stage with really good actors, really good direction, and just like bring everything out of that. I think would be really good. Where are we now? Question number 7, which actor would you most like to see play Hamlet in their prime? And I was really lucky to see David Tennant play Hamlet in his prime. I've seen quite a few good Hamlets actually. Rory Kinnear was also pretty good. I don't think anyone's going to top David Tennant. What I would say is that there is a Shakespeare version that I wish I had seen, and that's the version of Macbeth that came out in, I think it was the 80s, it might have been 1888, with Ellen Terry as Lady Macbeth, and she had this like fantastic, amazing green gown, and apparently it was like the absolute highlight of theatre in late 1880s London was Ellen Terry as Lady Macbeth, playing opposite, I think, Henry Irving as Macbeth. I wish I had been able to see that, or could see like just a clip of that. But yeah, I'm less bothered about seeing a different Hamlet, unless possibly could see like a youngish Viggo Mortensen, the guy that played Aragorn. I can potentially see him as a Hamlet, but he's probably a little bit old for that now. Maybe King Lear. I feel like that's the natural progression, Hamlet to King Lear. So question number 8 is your favourite speech or soliloquy, and I was going to do a speech from Richard II, but I forgot to bring it up, so I might add it on at the end. Question number 9 is a play that intimidates you. I think I would say Coriolanus or Coriolanus. I started to watch that on a National Theatre live version with my husband, and I think we got through, it was when they were showing National Theatre live as a free during the pandemic, and we watched the first chunk of it, and then we had to pause it for some reason, and we were just like, we really don't want to plunge back into that because it wasn't working for us. So yeah, I would be hesitant about buying theatre tickets to go and see that, because I didn't quite click with it as a show, as a story. Question number 10 is tips for intimidated readers of Shakespeare, people reading Shakespeare for the first time who are intimidated. I would definitely say, if you're reading, start with one you know. Start with one that you've seen performed or that you've heard a lot about. Don't start with Hamlet. Maybe start with a comedy. I mean, I introduced my husband to Shakespeare with a performance of Macbeth, which possibly scarred him for a significant amount of time. But yeah, start with one that appeals to your interests. But the main thing is start by watching, and I think a few people have said this, Shakespeare plays are written to be watched and they're created to be engaging, and the actors will be able to bring the life to it and make it make a bit more sense. And if you can't watch it, then act it. So if there's a section that's not making sense to you, try reading it aloud and try reading it with the stress on different words, and that might make it make sense in a way that you don't think that it does. And imagine the emotions that might go with it. Then question number 11 is your favourite Shakespeare play and why. And I think I'm going to just reflect back to the plays that I've mentioned a few times in the course of this video. Probably my favourite tragedy would be King Lear. Probably my favourite comedy would still be Twelfth Night. And I think to a certain extent Twelfth Night it's my favourite play because it's my favourite play, in that I've loved it for so long that I've seen so many different versions of it. I saw it again this summer in Duke's Theatre outdoor version. There's a very good National Theatre version that's available via National Theatre at Home. It's got, I can't remember the names. It's got just a fantastic cast, and it really brings the tragedy into the role of Malvolio. And like kind of plays with it's such a great play for playing with kind of characters' sexualities and self-doubt and things like that. So Twelfth Night is one that I just know so well that I still love it, and King Lear has just got so much emotional heft. Favourite tragedy? Maybe Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, maybe. Did I say tragedy? I meant history. But yeah, I'd probably go with, I'm less sure about the histories, but probably go with King Lear and Twelfth Night. Question number 12 is to tag people, but I am not tagging because I don't have very good internet. I can't really check who's done it or not done it recently, and yeah, I'm not really on it enough to be tagging people. Okay, I'm going to see if I can add the soliloquy. Okay, let's try. No matter where, of comfort no man speak. Let's talk of graves, of worms and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. Let's choose executors and talk of wills, and yet not so, for what can we bequeath save our deposed bodies to the ground? Our lands, our lives, and all are Bolingbroke's, and nothing can we call our own but death, and that small model of the barren earth which serves as paste and cover to our bones. For God's sake, Let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings, how some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghost they have deposed, some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court. And there the antic sits, scoffing at his state, and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene, to monarchize, be feared, and kill with looks, infusing him with self and vain conceit, as if this flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable, and humoured thus comes at the last, and with a little pin bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. Cover your heads, and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty, for you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread, like you, feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say to me I am king? There's so many speeches in Shakespeare that I love for so many reasons, but I really like the idea of the hollow crown, and the idea that I like the way that Shakespeare is able to grapple with these huge themes of statehood and power, and just put them in this perfect language. So that's one of the reasons that I chose that particular soliloquy. Thank you very much for watching. I've really enjoyed this tag and hearing different people's responses to it. And although I haven't massively participated in Shakespeare this year, I do love it as a fixture of the BookTube calendar, and hearing people talking about plays that I love is always great. So take care, everyone. Speak soon.